Hello, I'm Mr. BBates1 and welcome back to another how-to video. In today's video we are going to be taking a proper look at the structure block. We have featured this block on the channel before, it's such a handy block to have and there is so much more that we can do with it. Now, if you're looking to see how to export structures to another world, that's in another video. There is a link for that in the description below where we'll cover that specific topic, so go and take a look at that. But after you've watched this first, of course. In the meantime, we're going to be sticking to the same world, we won't be going anywhere. So let's dive in then and take a look at this structure block. Beyond the obvious then, you might think, what else can it do? Well, there's things that you can do with it, such as like giving custom items to players. You can store entities in it, which we've actually covered before. You can add animations to spawnings of the structure, and at a push, it actually has an auto-ruin function built in. Now I say at a push, it is very rudimental, but we'll see that a bit later on in the video. So let's take a look at the very basics of the structure block. I already have here laid out a few commands. Now, in order to give yourself a structure block, simply use the command give @p or @s structure block. And that is it. And that will give you the structure block. We already have that in our inventory. The next one along then is the structure void block. We won't need that just yet, but we will cover that in just a moment. And we have a normal command block, clear inventory, and a redstone block, which we'll use for some of the showcasing examples. So, the structure block. I actually think this is a very nice block. It's very distinctive. So the first time you place your structure block down then, you will notice that it has a bounding box. Now this bounding box is basically the area. This is the definable area in which something will be saved. Now the bounding box itself will always be in the positive X and positive Y axis. If you're not sure what that is, in the coordinates at the top, where you currently see it as -288 is where we're stood. And as you can see, the number is heading towards 0, that's positive. That's negative if we step backwards, and the same going that way, positive and negative as we go backwards. So when inside the structure block then, there is actually 4 different modes in which you can use. We have the save mode, the load mode, corner mode, and 3D export. Now, there may be in certain circumstances, if you're on a mobile device, some of these might not be available, like for example 3D export, but the main basic ones like save and load should be. The first line then is the structure name. In this case, we're just going to write test in here. And you'll see it will automatically prefix it with my structure test. And that will be exactly what is inside this bound box. Now, you have the size and the offsets which you can use. Now, the offsets are basically just to change the position. If you notice, there is colours on the lines, the red representing the X and the blue there representing the Z and the green representing the Y. You can change these offsets, so rather than it being at 0, you might want to do -5 as an example. Now you might think though, oh, but this is very tedious, I don't want to have to do all of this. I just wanted to find out where my structure is. Well, that's very fine. That's cool. If you have another structure block somewhere else, let's just pop it there for a second. We'll get rid of all of these. Oops, a bit too far away. If we simply go inside of this block and we set the mode to corner mode, all we have to do is give it the same name as the name down below, and as you can see, it's automatically prefixed. And there, you can see it's also changed the icon on the block as well. If we go back into here and simply click detect, you can see now that our box has changed. And if we come back outside of our structure block, you can see now that it's gone from the corner of the block to the corner of the other block. The next couple of items then, which is include entities and remove blocks. Now this is quite useful if you are only wanting to spawn in certain elements of a structure. So say for example, if you have a building that has entities and you don't want the entities to come in but you do want the building, then you would tick that on or off to use. And the same applies to blocks. If you just want to bring in the entities and rather than the blocks, then you would simply do that. For the most part though, this is the default configuration. You don't generally have to change these. The next thing then is the redstone save mode. So what this means is how do you want it to be saved? There's 2 methods of saving. There is save to memory and save to disk. Now this is very important, and what you would use each one depending on how you would want to actually use this structure. So in this example today, everything is going to be saved in memory. What this basically means is that while I save it now and while we create these structures, like I've got some examples here, that's fine. But as soon as I quit this world, it's gone from memory. Those structures won't save. You would have to simply resave them again. So like this, for example, these are all in memory mode, but it's fine because I've left them in place. I can come and resave them before I use them as an example. Now, if you want them to physically stay with the world, you change this to disk mode, and what that would mean is that the structure will be physically saved to the game files. And then the final option on the save is the actual show or hide the bounding box. Obviously with it off, it's quite self-explanatory. With save mode, there does come an additional button here called export. Now I have noticed this on some mobile devices, this is not here. I think iOS, for example, is not here, but for Android it should be. This is related to taking it to another world, so you would use this option instead if you needed it to go for another world. But in this instance, you would just simply click save here, and you can see it says structure saved. Let's take a look at the load mode. As a fresh one, if we go to load, so there's no pre-name there, you can see looks like this. We simply type in the name of our structure, and if the game recognises it, it should turn white, and our bounding box should change shape. At the moment, because we haven't changed the spawning offset, it's obviously still pointing to the positive axis. But with this, you can simply use this to change the dimension where you want it to be. So say, for example, I wanted it to just be like -4, for example, there. You can see the bounding box has changed and moved down, and then when you load it in, the structure will load in that area. Same elements as the save load then, include entities, off entities, stuff like that. If you wanted to load them in, you can do. Now, integrity, this is actually related to the auto ruin function I was saying. It's very rudimentary. If you change this other than 100, what this actually means is then it will miss certain blocks, and it just sort of creates this ruin function. We'll cover that in a demonstration a bit later on. For the most part though, obviously if you want a structure to just spawn in 100%, you leave it as that. So the seed, I'm not going to lie, I don't really know what difference this makes in terms of loading. It only appears under the actual load function. What I've noticed is that it seems to store the seed in where the actual structure was saved, from what I can see. But I don't really know what that does in terms of changing or the effect it has on loading. The next options then are about how you want it to spawn in. Now I'll be really honest with you, this is all a trial and error process when it comes to spawning things in. So obviously in this case you would mess around with the offsets. You would change the rotation. Now if you have built something and you think, oh actually I want it to be the other way around, this is what you can use mirror mode for, by simply flipping the X or the Z axis. It's called mirror here, but it's basically just flipping it, and that'll flip it so the structure's left or right. The animation mode for load is rudimentary. I'm not going to lie. There is some certain things like you can do with like a red carpet rollout effect using an animation and stuff like that. But from the experiment that I've done with the layer and by block and things, by block's pretty cool. See the blocks coming in. You can adjust the size that it takes, and obviously it speeds up the animation. I can't really say much about the animation mode. It's there. It is probably something you'll not use that often. There's an export button on the load side as well. I'm not quite sure why that is. I think it's just basically not wanting to change the UI and just changing the functions behind it, perhaps, I don't know. But there's no real reason to have an export on a load function, but it is there, you can do so. We've already spoken about corner mode. So the last option then is the 3D export mode. There is no auto detect with this side of things, but you can obviously do it in the save mode first, auto detect the size, and then flip to 3D export mode, and it should maintain the offsets and the sizing. So it's just the export button. When you press that, it exports a GLB file format, which you can use in Paint and editing tools. And that's the very basics of a structure block. It takes a lot of fiddling around, I'm not going to lie. It's not a simple just put down, ready to use element. You have to do some tweaking before you use it. And that's basically how we do it. And there's actually an example here of doing that. You can see there's a big empty space behind me here. And what I've done is I've got 3 buildings here. I've got a tower, I've got a gatehouse, and I've got a wall over there. And essentially I've built the external of an entire castle just by using these structure blocks. So now that we've covered the actual block itself, let's take a look at some of the use case scenarios. As you know me, I don't like to just show you the block. I like to show you some actual use cases of it so you can see it in action. The first use case scenario then is the custom item. So what I've done here is I've put in my structure block already, and I've already got my save mode selected. I've called it custom item, and as you can see it's just one block. We want it to include the entities, and everything's just pretty much the default. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my item. Now in this instance I've just used the totem of undying. I am literally just going to call this extra life. So now that we have the extra life, the first thing we want to do is we want to make use of this. So this is the structure void block. So you're probably thinking, what is this block? So essentially the structure void block is effectively an add-on to the structure block in a way. Whenever you use the structure block and you don't want everything in an area to be saved, if you want something to be effectively a void, then you would use this block. And the whole idea is that when you spawn in a structure, wherever this void block was, it wouldn't overwrite. Now what you do is that you place your void block down like so, and then you get your custom item and you throw it on there, and then step back. Now this is important. You need to wait for a little moment before you do anything. Now the reason why we wait is because this has a pickup timer on it. Now if you put it down on the floor and you stand there, I think it's like 3 seconds or something stupid. Let's see, 3 to 5 seconds. I can't remember exactly what it is, before it zips back into your inventory again. Now the reason why we're wanting this to reach that maximum timer is that when we spawn it in, it zaps straight into the player's inventory immediately. Now that we've got it there, that timer is well and truly up. So we're just going to save this. Now you don't get any output from it, but effectively that there has saved the structure. Now if I take this and I throw it in here, I have a command block here. Basically using the structure command, I'm telling it to give the closest player the custom item that we saved. So it doesn't matter where you stand, it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you can reach this button, boom, there you go. Now the reason why we use this void block is when this item spawns in, if the player is on a half slab for example, you don't want that half slab to be overwritten by the empty spaces in here, because believe it or not, that empty space is still an overwritable thing. And if you were on a half block and you spawned that in, you would end up overwriting your half block with nothing. And that is the reason why we do this. So therefore it only spawns in this item and it never spawns in the air around it. To give yourself the void block, it is just simply give, obviously at S or at P, structure underscore void. So the next thing is then custom NPCs and villagers. Now we've already covered NPC stuff and quest stuff before in another video, but obviously as you can see here I've got a villager as well. I've just simply gone into a survival world somewhere. I've taken this villager, saved him in a block, and now I can take him wherever I go. And as you can see, he's got a different sort of outfit on than the usual plains outfit that you would have. The next one is the animations. I mentioned to you before, it does have an animation. It is quite crude, I'm not going to lie. It's not fantastic, but you know, I'm sure you can have some fun with this somewhere along the line. So as you can see here, I've got my bounding box and I've got 2 load options here. So the first one is to roll out a red carpet. The second one is to remove the red carpet, and we can do that via animations. Riveting stuff. And then obviously the final function is the auto ruin function that I said that there is. So I've got my structure block here and I have the wall saved, ready to spawn in. As you can see, I've set the integrity to 92%. And that essentially means is I don't want it to spawn in every single block. And this thing will basically just spawn it in at random. So if we go boom, like this. And as you can see, the wall now has missing blocks. The main event then. The main purpose of the structure block. Building buildings, of course. And once you've actually spent the time to lay out the different things, you can make buildings very, very quickly. I'm not going to lie, I probably spent around about 2, maybe 3 hours tops. All of this, and that's building these because obviously they're quite crude, they're not to high detail, and then just working out placement and layouts. Now I've actually got all the bounding boxes turned off for the moment, so you can't see the shape of this. But if we just go up here, you can see I've got structure blocks everywhere. Well, all I got to do was power these blocks. But then let's start placing these blocks down. So the first one, actually, I think we're gonna do is this one. Yes. Boom. There's our gatehouse. Now the next thing we want is the wall. Boom. There's our wall. And we go over here as well. There's our wall. There's our wall. There's our wall. And look at that. We've built an entire wall in just mere seconds. So let's build the rest of it then. And there we go. Just a few minutes, and now we have the outsides of our entire castle all here and built. And that is literally how good the structure block is and how useful it is. We can actually now walk all the way around, and you know, obviously now we can move some of these if we wanted to create more of a seamless passway. Oh, hang on a sec, we missed something. We're missing a tower. Whoops. My bad. We'll put that in place. Now we have our tower. Well, that's all we got time for today. Thank you very much if you've got to the end of the video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all guys next time. Bye! And there we go, flat pack castle.